For the last couple of years, I essentially quit kayak fishing. And by quit kayak fishing, I mean tournament fishing, which for me, unfortunately, both go hand in hand. When I wasn't tournament fishing, I wasn't fishing at all. And you all probably don't care why I quit, but I wanted to share my story because I thought maybe some of you shared the same, have had the same struggles or same thoughts or run up against the same barriers. Stay tuned to the end because I'm going to tell you why I'm dipping my toe back in and starting to get more involved with actual tournament fishing and more recreational fishing this year. But I want to give you a few examples of what had me pulling back over the last couple. So let's get into it. Now these are in no particular order, but number one, over the decade and over a decade that I've been kayak fishing, the manpower aspect has been taken out of the sport. And I don't expect any sport to mold its rules to what I want. I understand the evolution of the sport is motors. We'll probably have 2 motors on a kayak here in the next year or two. But when I got into it, kayak fishing was a replacement for basketball. It filled the competitive void that when I couldn't keep playing basketball at any sort of competitive level, kayak fishing filled that void, not only because it was a competitive outlet, but it required physical stamina and strength. The majority of people paddled. The few unicorns that had pedal drive systems, Hobie and Native had maybe just dipped in, but Hobie was the only one. The Mirage Drive was the only one that existed then, and not many people had those. It was mostly a paddle game, and tournament fishing was a mental game, which fishing is always a mental game, but it became even more of one then because the weather mattered, the conditions mattered, because you had to physically move the kayak, paddle it, or pedal it to where you were going to fish. So 30-mile-an-hour winds, bad rain coming in, whatever the case may be, it affected your decision making, and I thrived on number one, staying in shape for kayak fishing. Number two, being able to outgrind folks physically on the water that were probably better fishermen than I was, because I've never considered myself the best fisherman, the most talented fisherman, but I could outgrind and outwork a lot of people. If you got to a tournament and the weather was going to be bad, the conditions were going to be rough, you almost could guarantee that you had 80% of the field beat because they were going to stay close to the ramp, stay in some pocket. And if you were willing to cross that big mouth of a creek and get to the juice, you could win. And that's gone with the advent of all the modern boats with motors, trolling motors, electric outboards, things like that. And that has definitely had an effect on me pulling back from the sport, which is a me issue, not a sport issue. I know the sport's going to evolve. Now, another reason, number two, is just a little bit of burnout. I mean, I've been doing kayak fishing since basically 2011, 2012, and you do something long enough, you get a little bit burned out. So I love fishing local tournaments early, but really my thing was I love traveling and going to new buddies' water, fishing in different states. I had a lot of fun doing that, but that gets old, especially the little older you get. Sometimes it gets old and the grind gets a little bit old. And I got a little burnt out on doing it. And sometimes, some years, over the last couple of years, I felt myself going just because I felt like I should go, which is a silly reason to do anything. You should only do things you want to do when it comes to hobbies and recreation anyway. And, I would leave on day one sometimes. I'd have a rough morning or even catch a limit, but just not a very big limit. And I'd go grab lunch and decide to head on back to Arkansas because my back was sore or whatever. I was talking myself out of competing and finishing the tournament. So that burnout had me pulling back and essentially had me quit fishing for the last couple of years. Another thing, and this kind of goes along with the motor thing, is I'm not a big fan of the technology arms race in fishing in general. And of course, if it's anywhere in fishing, it's going to be in kayak fishing. I'm not a live scope guy. I don't own live scope. I'm not going to get into that argument on here because once again, a sport or an activity, a competition shouldn't mold its rules to me or to any particular anglers. The rules are the rules. And I have to adapt or not adapt, and that's just the way it is. But I don't like it, and because I don't like it, it had me pulling back from fishing tournaments because I feel like it takes away from I'll call it the magic or the instinct of the sport. And I know live scope fans will say it doesn't catch them. I get that. I've fished around folks with live scope, and they didn't catch anything. So I understand that. I just personally didn't like it and still don't really like it. And it had me taking a step back from competition. Now I've got a video coming out soon where I went and fished a tournament. I took the graph and the electronics completely off my kayak just to see is it possible to compete and win without it. My son says if you don't have scope, you're entering a gunfight with a knife. And sometimes that might be true, but I wanted to see if it's possible. So I have a video coming out on that soon, and I've decided I'm going to fish how I want to fish. And that's why I'm easing back into the sport more, and I'm going to fish how I'm going to fish, and whether I have scope or not, and I'm going to try to enjoy the competition regardless. And then the last thing that had me basically not fishing the last few years, I've always exercised and tried to stay in pretty good shape, but I haven't kept my diet dialed in, things like that. And I've got some pretty bad neck and back problems that really can flare up. I've even got some elbow and shoulder problems. And that's not a woe is me story, but I didn't do everything it took to manage those. So when I would get out on the water for a couple of days at these long national tournaments or those long drives to get there, I mean, my neck felt like it was on fire and I was melting down, and I didn't want to be there. I just didn't want to be there. So essentially had me quit tournament fishing, other than a few sporadic tournaments here and there. And if I wasn't tournament fishing, I wasn't going recreational fishing either. I mean, I went months without even putting a kayak in the water, which sounds crazy if you'd asked me that 5-10 years ago. But the last 6 months, I've kind of dialed in my eating, got on a real good workout plan. I've eliminated a lot of inflammation in my neck, shoulder, and everything else, trying to get back into fishing more because I do love it. It's a lot of fun. But those obstacles, those physical obstacles, definitely had me pull back the last couple of years. So there's a handful of reasons why I quit over the last couple of years. I wonder if any of you have shared the same thoughts or had the same issues or ran into the same obstacles. I won't even bring up the financial obstacles with inflation out of control and costs going up. Of course, that's a problem for some people. I didn't really think of that as a reason why I didn't want to do it. It was more of just I don't want to spend my time doing this if I'm frustrated with all these other factors I already mentioned. But if finances is an obstacle to one of you, I'd love to see that in the comments, because it certainly can be. It's not cheap to go to these tournaments, especially out of town. So this year, what am I going to do to get my mind right and get back into it? I'm going back to where it all began. I'm fishing local events with the natural state kayak anglers. I'll probably dip into Missouri and Oklahoma a little bit too, maybe, but local trails is where everything started. It's really the heart of everything kayak fishing. It's probably the heart of bass fishing, period, because most people aren't on the Elite Series. They fish a bass club in their backyard. So I want to fish one-day events, which will be a lot easier physically to handle, and kind of regrow my my edge and love for the sport by fishing locally and seeing old friends I haven't seen in a while, because the last few years, not only have I stopped traveling much, I didn't even fish my local trails. So guys that I became friends with here locally, I haven't seen them in a year. I just went to a few tournaments this year here, and it's like, hey, good to see you, buddy. I hadn't seen you in forever, and it's my fault because I haven't been showing up to not only the tournaments, but the weigh-ins or the meetings or anything. I just kind of haven't been going. I mean, you see Ryan and I, if you follow the Kayak Bass Nation podcast, we get on there and talk kayak fishing all the time, but both of us, for different reasons, have not got to kayak fish like we used to. So I know me, I'm trying to get back into it now. Hopefully this local trail is going to light a fire for me, and I can keep up the workout habits and physical things to make sure I can eventually dip back out into the national scene. But really, I want to do some local tournaments, and I just talked to my son on the phone before I made this video. I want to really get more back into recreational fishing. Floating the river is my favorite thing on earth to do. We've got wonderful rivers all around Northwest Arkansas that I've neglected over and over. So I'm looking at another kayak for the river, possibly a canoe, do some wade fishing around the creeks. And my son actually bought a bass boat, so I'm going to hop in his boat some and do some fishing like that. And I've got a newfound love for hunting that'll be coming up this fall. So you'll see a lot of that on this channel probably. But I just wanted to share my thoughts on where I've been and why I haven't really been fishing and why I'm trying to get back into it. So if any of you have anything similar that you've come up against or had those kind of thoughts, please put them in the comments. I'd love to see them. And as always, I appreciate y'all watching.